We're happy to welcome you on АЛЛАТРА TV. Today, it's a great honor for us to speak with the Chief Rabbi of Kyiv and Ukraine, Moshe Reuven Azman, who represents the All-Ukrainian Congress of Jewish Religious Communities. Rabbi Azman is making tremendous efforts to support Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, both inside the country and on the international stage. We are very, very, very happy to welcome you here in Washington today. Thank you so much for everything you do. We're following your work. We see all of your international activity and everything you're doing to make sure that assistance is reaching Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me to this broadcast. Well, first of all, not everything I do. This is only a small part, so to speak. It's not that I kind of boast about it. I believe that every person in such a difficult time, in a time of war, is obligated to do everything they can, and even what they think they cannot. That is why I try to do both what is visible and what is invisible. Because when a person believes in what they are doing, when they are present, and see that many people are facing danger to their lives, that people are suffering in tragedies, then here one cannot, so to speak. One must not be shy. One must set things aside. Even among us, the study of the Torah is set aside, and people roll up their sleeves and go out to save lives.
That's true. And here, before asking the next question, I'd like to mention at least a small part of what you've done. You're really doing an incredible amount of work, both visible and invisible, as you said. You also lead a large volunteer center at the Brodsky Synagogue, which has coordinated the evacuation of more than 40,000 people from active combat zones and provides food, medications, and first aid supplies to civilians and hospitals. You also founded the Anatevka Shelter Village in 2014, which provides housing, medical care, and education for displaced people. And through your organization, you've essentially built a community infrastructure in Ukraine, including a public cafeteria, a school, and other essential services. And so, what do all of these initiatives mean to you personally? And what values, what inner convictions truly drive you when you do all of this?
You know, first of all, you name many of the things that we do, but I think it would be more accurate to ask, and I write this down for myself differently. What have we not done yet? That's what I write. Meaning what we have done, we have already done, fine. But what we have not done, maybe there is still someone. How many people are still left without our help? How many still need assistance? What drives me is what the Torah, our holy Torah, teaches. First of all, that when people are in trouble, a person cannot remain indifferent, cannot sit and say, "This doesn't concern me." In other words, if you are walking past a river and you see a person drowning, there are many people who would simply say, "Oh, I'm late, someone is waiting for me, so what if he's drowning? What does that have to do with me?" But no, you are obligated to stop. You are obligated to rush in and save that person, because the worst thing possible is indifference. Coldness and indifference. And when people are cold and indifferent, that often leads, well, to wars. When some are indifferent, then tyrants, for example, begin to act and do whatever they want. That is what inspires me. I'll give you one example. At the beginning of the war, we brought from Israel, in total, about 500 medical backpack kits, red backpacks, containing everything needed to save a life. And as you know, life-saving in the very first minute, when a person is wounded, for example, is critically important. Life and death depend on it. At the beginning of the war, there was nothing to save people with, and so I simply distributed these backpacks to everyone who asked for them. Then, after some time, a few weeks, a few months, feedback started coming in. People began to say, "Thanks to your backpack, one person was saved." Then 2 people, then 10 people, then 30 people. And suddenly you realize, wow, this is probably the most important thing you can do. This wow moment. You've already done something in your life, something truly essential. You know, people often compete over whose car is bigger or more expensive, whose house is better. And I say, let's compete instead in who has done more good and done it better. Sometimes people ask me, "Oh, is he doing PR?" No, I'm not doing PR. I don't need PR. It doesn't make my life better. So why do we share all of this publicly? To tell people, let's do better than I did. Odi, let's do more. Because there are so many people who need help that even you, and you, and you, all of us together still won't manage to do everything. That's why we have done what we could. And we will continue to do more, and to do it better, and with higher quality.
I believe it's true that this is the best kind of competition there can be. That's true. Over the years of your life's work, you have truly helped an enormous number of people in Ukraine. And is there some particular story that especially stayed with you? One that you encountered and that strongly influenced your view of the world overall?
You know, there are many such stories, actually. I can't even single out one in particular. Since the beginning of the war, I have been under heavy shelling. At times, there was a real danger to life, and not only to my life. My grandchildren were there, for example. Children, grandchildren, and hundreds of refugees. Elderly people, women, children. And in moments like that, you completely rethink your life. When you realize that money, for example, suddenly no longer matters, that it's lost its value. To save a person, you can give any amount of money. In my case, I had money, and I paid when it was necessary to evacuate people from combat zones. From places where people were sitting in attics, in basements, and people were naming crazy sums because no one wanted to go and rescue them, and I paid. Because what is saving a human life, and what are pieces of paper? So for me, that was the most significant period of time, when it becomes very clear to you what truly matters in life and what doesn't. Moreover, there is something else that is particularly important. I met many people who revealed themselves. In war, people reveal who they truly are. Either their good essence comes out, or the opposite, and the overwhelming majority were people about whom I would never have said that they would become heroes. And suddenly, a person who is quiet, modest, whom no one noticed or heard, suddenly shows heroism. I saw many such people. I think that is what has influenced me the most.
It is known that you helped organize the visit of Pastor Mark Burns to Ukraine, the spiritual advisor to Donald Trump. Could you please tell us why you felt it was important for him, as a religious leader, to see the situation in Ukraine with his own eyes? And overall, do you consider spiritual diplomacy a key tool for solving global problems?
That's a very good example, because my friend, Rabbi Yaakov Lichkin, introduced me to Mark Burns. We went to see him where he lives, in Greenville, North Carolina. We met him and talked. I suddenly realized that much depends on spiritual leaders, because people believe them, people trust them. I met with him 3 times in America. The second time at President Trump's inauguration, he invited me to speak. I spoke to about 1,000 people then, and that was very important to me. We met again after that. By the way, the third time we met was here, in this place. I told him, come to Ukraine. Come see with your own eyes. One thing is, when you tell someone, a person might believe you, but then say, well, I don't know, maybe he's right, maybe he's not sincere, maybe he's hiding something. I told him, I'm not hiding anything. Fly over and see it with your own eyes. When he came, I met him. He arrived and we started in Anativka, our little miracle town. From there, we went to Bordyanka, Bucha, and Irpin. After seeing it all with his own eyes, everything changed for him. Because before that, he says himself. And that is, by the way, a commendable quality. Yes, I was wrong. I was against helping Ukraine. Not many people will say I was wrong. But he found the courage to say it. Then we met with leaders of religious denominations, and they laid out documents for him, showing how many religious sites and homes were destroyed, how many clergy were killed, how many Ukrainian children were abducted by Russia, and so on. Everything was documented and verified. When he saw all of that, and we also went to a hospital, met soldiers and talked with ordinary people, everything was open. No one deceived him. It was, go, see, talk to the people. And in 2 days, his outlook changed. He came back and began to say that America first means helping Ukraine. It doesn't matter which party, it doesn't matter who the president is. You must help the heroic Ukrainian people who are defending their independence and democracy, and in effect, defending other countries too. I'm grateful that he came and saw everything and that he continues to speak the truth every day. I really thank him for that. I believe we should bring as many people as possible. Just recently, I was in Israel at the Wailing Wall, together with Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister, Taras Kachka. A delegation was at the wall, and we met thousands of pastors who had come from America. We met them there, and among them was an acquaintance of ours, also a pastor, Michael Evans. We told him, "You came to support Israel, and now please come to Ukraine. Bring 1,000 pastors, even 500, 300, however many you can bring. They will come and see with their own eyes, and each of them will then tell the truth to their congregations. Each one reaches thousands, some reach hundreds of thousands. Then everything will be clear." That's why it's so important to bring people, because hearing and seeing are two different things. Hearing is important, but when someone sees it for themselves, there's no arguing with someone who has seen it.
That's true. Thank you so much for everything you do, for what you've already done, and what you keep doing. It's a great honor for us to continue this work. Essentially, carry on your mission by recording Pastor Mark Burns's speeches and spreading them here in the United States, in Ukraine, and everywhere else. So thank you very much. I have one more question for you. Given your extensive international efforts, including meetings with American politicians, various think tanks, and religious leaders, all aimed at highlighting Ukraine's role in defending democracy, what key messages or strategies do you find most effective for ensuring continued and strengthened international support for Ukraine?
You put that in a very complicated way. Let me just answer by simplifying the question. I'll give you an example. This morning, I was taking a taxi from the hotel to get here. The driver and I got to talking. He was a very nice guy, originally from Ethiopia. He asked me, "Where are you from?" I said, "From Ukraine." And he began asking me questions. I answered him. By the time we arrived, it was about a 15-minute ride. I had explained everything to him, and he was shocked. In just 15 minutes, I told him the whole truth as it is. Now, that's one person who found out, and he'll tell others, maybe his family later today. Maybe he'll talk about it at some event, like a gathering of taxi drivers. And then those drivers will tell it to the people who ride in their taxis. Thus, we never know the impact. So, my principle is this. I come somewhere. I have my own connections, people I know, and sometimes things just happen with God's help. Today, for example, I called some friends and said, "Help arrange a meeting for me with a certain person, a well-known, very influential individual." Unfortunately, I don't have direct access to him, and I don't need a meeting just to say, "Hello." I don't need a photo. I need someone to tell him that I'm a serious person who speaks the truth. So they called me back and I said, "Please pass this on to him. Tell him I want to meet. I work with the Almighty. I carry the truth. I just want to talk. I'm not a politician." So I don't know exactly how it works, but I've seen it happen throughout my life when I speak the truth. It is said in the Tanakh, "Send your bread upon the waters, and it will come back to you." Sometimes you throw something into the sea, and it suddenly returns to you, later in a completely different form. That's why our job isn't to do the math, to sit there calculating, "Oh, will this work? Won't it work? How much have I done? What have I achieved?" That's not what I do. Right now, there are many people in Ukraine and really all over the world who are very negative. Why? They say, "Oh, what will tomorrow bring? There's no way out. The war has been going on for 4 years. Everything's bad. They're destroying the infrastructure." But that's the wrong mindset. Right now, we are lighting the Hanukkah candles. Every day we add one more candle. This means we should add more light. There's no point in saying whether things are bad or not bad. That's not up to us. What is up to us is doing good. If each person does something good, then each person's candle can turn into a massive flame. And the advantage of light over darkness as I always say, is that even a little bit of light drives away a lot of darkness. That's my principle. So let's say I come to Washington. I have some meetings lined up, some planned, some unplanned. Often when I arrive, I start with the scheduled meetings. Sometimes they work out, sometimes something falls through, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, another very important meeting comes up. Well, like the one with Mark Burns. I went there to discuss one issue, and then my friend told me, let's go visit a pastor. There's a guy named Pastor Burns. And so we went. We missed our flight that day, right there in Washington. What were we supposed to do? I said, let's get a car. How far is it? An 8-hour drive. I wasn't feeling very well, but I had to drive those 8 hours myself just to make it in time. I couldn't even stop to sleep, and we drove through the day, thank God, but we had to make it. He didn't know who we were, and that was the only day he was available. So we drove and we made it, because I knew we had to try and maybe something would come out of it. I wasn't sure, as I didn't know who he was. I didn't know how he would react. He could have said, you know, I'm not interested in that. Like many people say, we are America. We should help ourselves, not others. But suddenly, something clicked for him. Since then, we've had 3 meetings here. And then he came to Ukraine. This man has actually become a spouting source, a patriot of Ukraine who brings the truth to people. And think of how many people he has already shared that truth with. And it all started with a simple decision. If I had said back then, well, we missed the flight, okay, maybe next time, there might not have been a next time, because you know how it is. I'm busy. I need to fly again. Then he can't, or we can't. You should always take action. You can't let an opportunity slip by. It's a great example. I think about it now. What if we had given up back then? But we didn't. We took a car right at the airport and drove.
That's for sure. Thank you so much for actually doing that. My next question is quite broad. In your opinion, what is it that unites all people, regardless of their religion, faith, race, or nationality? What do we all have in common? What values and aspirations are truly universal?
We have a lot in common. We all share one great-great-great-grandfather, Adam, the first human. The world was created for the sake of one person, Adam. Then there was the great flood, and we have another common ancestor, Noah, who saved humanity from the flood when that generation had fallen into sin and drowned. The Almighty God has given humanity many chances to save itself. Then we had our forefather Abraham, who also carried the faith in one God when no one else believed. At that time, everyone worshipped idols. He was the one who was against it. By the way, do you know why he was called a Hebrew? Because the whole world was on one side of the river. And I don't just mean a physical river, but a philosophical one. The whole world followed idols. And Abraham said, no. The word Hebrew, Ipri, comes from ever, meaning the one from the other side. The one who stood against the whole world and refused to follow evil. And then he began spreading this truth to all people. Later, other religions emerged and accepted God, each with its own interpretations. But there is only one God, the one who created this world. And the main thing that unites all religions, what religion should be, is that it must bring light, and it must bring goodness to people. Because when religion brings evil or darkness, in most cases, it means people have distorted it for themselves to gain something from it.
Leverage.
Yes, using religion for personal gain or for the goals of some group. In reality, as I said, our forefather Abraham, the founder of our religion, how did he start? He set up a tent in the middle of the desert, and travelers, even idol worshippers, would pass through the desert, hungry and thirsty. He made 4 entrances to the tent from all sides, so they wouldn't even have to walk around it. Why? Because they were exhausted. He fed them, gave them water, all for free. The only thing he asked was that they thank God, who provided all of it. So, if all religions unite to do good instead of, well, if they don't do good, it's not really religion anymore. I'm not saying that they have to merge into one. Each faith should maintain its own path, but it must bring light, not darkness. And then everything will be good.
Absolutely. If you had the chance to give one piece of advice to the whole world, especially to the young generation, something every person would hear, what would you say?
Well, think about why you are living. Don't just close your eyes to it. Really think, what are your values and what are they for? For instance, I was thinking today, most people live with the goal of making more money, gaining some respect, or things like that. But I believe there are different priorities. I was holding a funeral the other day, back in Kyiv. People were crying. At every funeral I lead, I always say, a person takes nothing with them when they go. No gold, no money, no jewelry, no cars. So what do they take? They take only their good deeds, what they've done. Why? Because when a person leaves this world, they take nothing material. I show people examples. Let's say someone built an orphanage, and there is a sign saying this person built it. Or there's that building still standing. Someone built it 100 years ago, but no one cares about what that man built for himself. Thank God we have a commandment to provide for our families and to do good. But how much good a person did for others, that's what they take with them to the Almighty. And there, they receive their true reward. Not with money. Let's call it a true reward, given from the heart. So, people, think about why you're living, where you came from, where you're going, and before whom you will ultimately have to give an account.
If you could change at least one thing in the world right now, what would it be and why?
I would want to change myself. I try to change myself, and every person should try to change themselves, because changing yourself is much harder than giving advice to others. We usually know very well how this or that is being done wrong. When people are like, that parliament is bad, that president is wrong, well then go run for president or for parliament. And so, will you be able to stand it? Change yourself? You see how they behave there? Well, for example, there's a kitchen worker, a cook. He shouts, and you tell him, don't shout. Instead, make sure food isn't taken out, that it isn't stolen. It's a small thing, but from that grows something bigger later, because when that cook becomes a deputy, he can already steal on a much larger scale. That's why we start with ourselves. When at your own level, no matter who you are, each person does this. You change yourself, and then you change the world.
Indeed, these are truly beautiful words, and I think this is a wonderful conclusion to our interview. We would be happy to continue these conversations, perhaps during your next visit, and we will be very glad to see you again. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Friends, what I want to say is this. I came here to Washington. Today, Washington is the capital of the United States of America. But Washington is also a world capital because so much depends on what happens here, financially, militarily, and politically. And therefore, a great deal depends on the American president, on Parliament, on Congress, the Senate, and on the American people. So what I want to say is this. It does not matter which party is in power. Support for a just, defensive war must continue. The defense of Ukraine, because the Ukrainian people are standing heroically in defense of their country, their families, Europe, and I believe, the world as well. Because dark forces, what I call the axis of evil, dictatorial countries that attacked Ukraine and Israel, are trying to bring disaster to the world, a kind of flood. It doesn't matter what. The main thing is to kill and conquer. That is why the entire world must stand with Ukraine, because it's only Ukraine's issue. I am not saying that anyone here is mistaken. I am confident that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, is a very wise person. I am convinced that he is thinking about the fact that people are dying, that many soldiers are dying, and therefore everything must be done to achieve peace, but not peace at any cost. Peace must be achieved wisely, so that there will be no more war. I hope that when the Messiah comes soon, and we pray for his coming, there will be no more wars. But until then, we must do everything possible to achieve a just peace. That's how it is. And thank you to everyone who has helped, who is helping, and who will continue to help.
Thank you very much. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes.
Thank you, everybody that coming here. Thank you, Pastor Mark Burns, that you are a real patriot of Ukraine. And from the first time that I met you till now, that God take you to the right place. I would like to say you that I asked to Pastor Mark Burns to come to Ukraine, and he agreed. He came, and he saw by his eyes what the Russian criminal regime made in Ukraine. It's Bucha, Irpin, Borodyanka. It's people was murdered there. I saw his heart was broken, and after this he talked. We have meeting with the religions representative, all religions in Ukraine, and they brought him truth. How many Ukrainian children was stole to Russia? How many religion buildings was destroyed? How many priests was killed? What Russia did in Ukraine? And his heart was, he decided to come back to America and to bring truth to here, that all people in America know truth. First of all, I would like to thank American people, and here in Congress, I would like to thank to Republicans and Democrats and President of the United States, Donald John Trump, for help that you stand with Ukraine. 4 years, terrible war. People tired. Here, people tired. I speak people, they tired. It's, how long is the war? But you have to know that people in Ukraine, and they're not only tired, they are every day under the shelling, under the attacks, and now I come from Ukraine, is freezing. Here is below 0 degrees. And people in Russia attack the civil infrastructure, and people sitting in the buildings without heating, without light, without water, without an elevator work. And my volunteers come personally to the 20 floors to bring the old people water, to bring them food, to bring them warm clothes, and to evacuate people. When you see it, you understand immediately what is our prayer. I think people here, I was here today, it was prayer breakfast, people here pray, but now it's not enough. We have to pray, but when we see the people in the tragedy, we come them to save them. That's why I thank God that gave me opportunity to be in the right place in the right time. I'm from the first day of the war. I didn't leave Ukraine. I could leave Ukraine, but I didn't leave Ukraine. And I was a few times under the strong shelling and risked my life. And I proud that I knew volunteers and Christian volunteers that lost their lives in the beginning of the war, in the middle of the war, lost their lives to defend people. And thank the Ukrainian soldiers, heroic soldiers. That's the strong defense Ukraine that don't want to give up and to go to slavery, back to Soviet Union, back to Russia. I was born in Russia. I was born in Leningrad, as Putin was born, but he was KGB at that time. I was investigated by KGB, and that's why I know what's now the Russia. They say that would like to rebuild Soviet Union. And we as a Jewish people, we was in slavery in Egypt, slavery, and we escaped. God escaped us from Egypt, and Pharaoh wanted to take us back to Egypt, to slavery. The same thing that the Ukrainian people, the Russia, would like to take back them back to Soviet Union, to the slavery. They don't want. They want freedom, and the freedom name, it has name, and it's called Ukraine. And and I think it's General Budanov say, Yes, it's yeah. General Budanov, now he's in negotiations, in a peace negotiation. And I would like to say a few words about Ukrainian children. And Pastor Mark Burns, remember that 20,000 and you see to the mass media, he usually say that 20,000 more, much more than 20,000 Ukrainian children they took to Russia, and they tried to that they forgot their identity, their culture, their language, their motherland. I, as a Jewish people, I remember the story that Russia did in 1827. That was the law, Tsar law, to take the Jewish children to the army for 25 years. Yes, and they took them from their homes and they took them to the army, and they did all of the Russian Tsar soldiers that they will forget their home, their language, their history, their religion, and that's the same thing Russia do now to Ukrainian people. I think that everyone in the world can. He was born free. That's why everyone can choose here who is with a religion, who is what he wants to do, and where he wants to live, and which language to speak. That's why I think that we have to thank God that we together, all good people, will in the right side, and the excess of evil, I call it Iran regime, that's with God help Donald Trump, and America will destroy a regime in Iran, North Korea, Russia, and another countries that kill people, that kill own people, don't allow them to be freedom. Thank you very much to Pastor Mark Burns to invite me. God bless you and all people here that stand with Ukraine. And I would like to, I continue to bring people to Ukraine. I ask people, please come to Ukraine, see by your eyes what's happened there. And I think here I have to be one. I just speak with one young businessman, Jordan Kestelman. I asked him and come to Ukraine and just begin to invest to Ukraine, invest just $6 million and wants to bring $1 billion investment to Ukraine, repair Ukraine. I would thank him. And Jordan, come. And today they say, yes, I continue to invest to Ukraine because I believe that Ukraine will be restored, will be a good country, free country. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless America. God bless Ukraine.
Thank you.
Today is an important day. Freedom has a name, and it's called Ukraine. We're gathered here at the Rayburn House Office building, where people from across the country have gathered to show their support for Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Rabbi Azman, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today.
Yes, first of all, I would like to thank the American people, and here in the building of Congress, I would like to thanks to American congressmen, senators, American president, American people, that you stand together with Ukraine, unite with Ukraine. Just 4 years, the terrible war and Russia against Ukraine. And it's very hard. I know that people here tried to help Ukraine, but they know that Ukrainian people, they defend their families, their motherland, but they defend Europe, defend all free world. That's why I come here to bring my voice, to ask them, please continue stand with Ukraine, support Ukraine, and a little light will dispel a lot of darkness.
So this conference is intentionally bipartisan. Why is it important for the world to come together in unity at this time right now?
Because it's because I call we have a countries that's I call it excess of evil. It's Iran regime, in North Korea, and Russia, and another country that's totalitarian country. They kill own people. They put a prison on people that they don't allow the people living with freedom. And Ukraine wants to be free. Ukraine was in the Soviet Union, and 30 years ago they liberate from Soviet Union. And Russia now they say clear that they would like to come back to Soviet Union to take Ukraine back to slavery. And that's why Ukrainian people fight for their independence, for their freedom, and we have to help them.
What most inspires you about the resilience of the Ukraine and the Ukrainian people?
You know, I come now, this week I come from Ukraine. I see that it's very cold in Ukraine, and Russia special, they make everyday attacks to the civil infrastructure, and people sitting in a big building without light, without heating system, without water, but they don't give up. Strong people. And I see it's very hard, very hard. I saw by my eyes what happened, and people, it's very cold. It's very dangerous for life. It's very simple. It's dangerous for life, but people don't agree to give up and to go to slavery. That's why it's very proud that I'm there, that I can God gave me opportunity to save people, to help them. And I will continue to do it, and ask people here, please join us to our holy work.
So what future do you see for Ukraine as a nation and as a sovereign people?
I pray today in our hotel that I stand in Washington Hilton, was President Trump had a speech in the prayer breakfast, and 1,000 people was there, and they united. I think it's together with our prayers, and we have to change this world, because we have to bring the real peace. I know that we pray for Mashiach, Messiah will come and will stop all the war. That's written in the prophets, but we have to do not only pray, we have to do to save people, and his prayer is not enough. We have to go and save people. When you see somebody in the hard situation, you can put all your business inside and come and what we do. I see people in tragedy, I come and do it.
I agree. We have to take action behind our thoughts and prayers.
Yes.
You have an opportunity to address the Ukrainian people. What words of encouragement and words of solidarity would you like to express to them?
To Ukrainian people, I tell them every day, people will win. We'll pray, God with us, because, I know and I'm sure that a light is not the same as darkness. Little lights dispel a lot of darkness, and people, all the world stand with Ukraine, and American people stand in Ukraine, and together we'll win. God will bring us a real peace, no simple peace, a real peace. And I pray that Donald Trump and the American government will bring us real peace, and negotiation will come to the real peace result.
Rabbi Azman, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today. We really appreciate your kind and encouraging words.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Rabbi Azman. Thank you so much for joining us for another interview today. We are very, very happy to welcome you to Washington. Ukrainian Week is taking place right now here in Washington, D.C. And right now, Ukraine's voice is being heard louder than ever before. Right here in Washington, the place where all the decisions are made. We know you've already given several speeches on some very big stages. Thank you so much for joining us and speaking at the Freedom Has a Name Ukraine Conference, which was held under the leadership of Pastor Mark Burns on the Allatra platform. We are so grateful to you for being here and speaking the truth about what's actually happening in Ukraine. Could you tell us a bit about how this week has been for you? Where have you been, and what have you been working on? Perhaps there are some very important messages to share with both Ukrainians and the international community.
Thank you. I believe this past week, Ukrainian Week, has been very important, crucially important, because we needed to get the truth out about what is really happening in Ukraine. And what's happening in Ukraine right now is a horrific war. It didn't start just now. It's been going on for 4 years now. A lot of people are exhausted, and some have even forgotten. Here in America, many have forgotten and think the war is already over. That's why it was so important to convey this in every single speech I gave. And I was speaking almost every single day, sometimes even twice a day, addressing large audiences, medium and small ones, groups of people, and even one-on-one conversations. I used every opportunity. In Congress, in the Senate, and at the event Mark Burns organized in Congress. I kept telling people, look, I've just arrived from Ukraine, and there, Russia is destroying Ukraine's infrastructure. People are freezing. They are cold, sitting in the dark without electricity, heating, without water, and this is a war crime. I explained to them that while we are sitting here in a warm, heated room, people over there are quite literally freezing. And God forbid, there's no telling how many people, grandmothers, grandfathers, might not survive this winter. That's why we need to act now. And so I spoke, and, if I may say so, demanded action. Of course, one cannot demand, but to some extent, it was a call to action, let's call it that, for immediate help for Ukraine, help from the U.S. administration, from Congress, the Senate, and simply from various NGOs, charities, and humanitarian groups. We spoke with religious leaders. There were quite a lot of them here. Thousands of people attended these events. It's incredibly important that people came from all across the United States. You know, I actually spoke to the largest delegation there, and they told me they came from Washington State, not Washington, D.C., where we are now, but Washington State, way out on the West Coast. This delegation flew all the way out here, and they were deeply interested in what's happening in Ukraine. After my talk, some of them came up and said, we will come to Ukraine soon, we'll see it for ourselves, and we won't just come, we will help and invest. And I thought, wow, that means some seeds have sprouted or are starting to sprout right here and now. I want to thank the organizers of this conference because for a whole week, everyone here spoke about Ukraine. You know, today was the final Shabbat. I thought I'd rest on Shabbat. I was hoping to rest, but yesterday and today, we ended up spending Shabbat right in the hotel lobby where all my events were taking place. And still, people kept coming up to me. We kept talking and people were interested. I am sure our joint efforts won't be in vain, and we're going to see the fruits very soon.
Absolutely. And I can confirm it because I saw how many people came up to you. I'd like to mention here how important your voice and your advocacy are. People are really listening to you here, and not just here. It's so important for them to hear the truth from you, and to hear it directly from people who've just come from Ukraine and can explain what's actually happening on the ground. Because there really isn't enough information out there. And the American public desperately needs to hear what's going on right now, what kind of help is needed, and what needs to be done. Could you please tell us a bit more now so that both the Ukrainian diaspora and the international community can understand the current situation in Ukraine? I know you have a huge initiative to help people stay warm and get food. Could you tell us how you organize this and what is happening in Anatevka right now?
Look, when I see people in trouble, people have been suffering for 4 years. But now we are facing something new, a harsh winter. These Russian barbarians, so to speak, are deliberately attacking Ukrainian facilities and major cities like Kyiv, Odessa, Kharkiv, and others right when the winter is severe, during the peak of the freezing cold. They are destroying power stations, thermal power stations, and heating grids. This is equivalent to, I've said this before, I compare it to the siege of Leningrad. We actually just passed the anniversary of the siege of Leningrad, which my father survived as a young boy. It started in 1941 or 42 and lasted until 1944. He told me himself that besides hunger, there was a terrible cold. People froze to death. It was the same tactic. The Nazi troops used their planes to destroy the infrastructure. And suddenly I see them doing the exact same thing. Russian planes and missiles are destroying it. Imagine an elderly woman living on the 20th floor. The elevator isn't working. She's living in the freezing cold, literally freezing, with no water, no electricity. What is she supposed to do? She can't go up and down those stairs. Sure, we help some people. We help. People help. The city helps. But how much can one help? Kyiv is a city of 3.5 million. Other cities are also in the millions. Even if everyone helps, there are still so many people. And for many, we simply don't know where they live or who exactly needs help. It's terrifying. That's the message I was trying to get across. And so we started to help. I said we're going to use absolutely everything we have to help for as long as it lasts. Someone even told me, listen, on a scale this massive, what can you really do? Okay, you have 1, 2, 3 buses. What difference will that make? I said, well, we can help 100 people, 200, 300, 400. If we start helping, others will follow suit. By the way, I recently read that the military and other mobile centers have joined our initiative. Plus, the city is taking action too. They've set up these warming tents, the points of invincibility. We organized our Mitzvatanks, the tanks of commandments that previously served as our spiritual centers. We retrofitted them to save people as mobile points of invincibility. On average, between 100 to 200 people pass through one mitzvah tank per day. We have 2 mitzvah tanks operating, plus a regular bus that was donated to us a while back. It can hold about 50 people at a time, so even more people go through that one. I'm currently negotiating to get a few more large buses and retrofit them. We've installed power outlets throughout the bus so people can sit in different spots and charge their devices. They can drink some tea, and we provide targeted aid. Or they can just come in to warm up and sit for a while. They come out of their houses. Our bus parks right outside buildings that have lost power. Word gets around quickly. People notify each other on local websites, local WhatsApp groups, and they just come down to warm up. So, we give them physical warmth, but our volunteers also give them warmth of the soul. We do what we can. I think if other people, or anyone with the means, or charitable and volunteer organizations, can do the same, then the more people we save, the better.
How are the children coping with all of this? I know you just mentioned the elderly, and I realize how incredibly hard it is for them. But what is happening with the kids?
My heart just ached. When we first started this program, I would go there myself every day to oversee things, and not just to oversee, but to think through the logistics, how to do it better. Should we park in the same spot every day so people get used to it and know we're there? Or should we move to different locations every day? I'd be there, and, for example, a mother would come in with her kids and say, it's 5 degrees Celsius in our home. We're freezing. They didn't ask for anything. She said, we just go outside to warm up. We don't know where to go. Sometimes we go into a store or somewhere else. I said, come with us. We'll give you shelter at one of our facilities, in Anatevka or elsewhere. We have already sheltered many people. Well, we try to take in as many as we can. Some people asked for blankets, so we bought blankets. For others, well, in short, we are trying to do whatever we can. Unfortunately, our financial resources are limited. We've already exhausted just about everything we had. So, if anyone, let's say, wants to help us, it will all go directly to this. Right now, the need is immense. We are buying diesel for generators and wood pellets for private heating. We have these large heating boilers set up over there. We need food for the people, medicine, and so much more. So if anyone listening to this wants to join in, it is vital right now, today. Have them reach out to us, and I'll tell them exactly how they can help.
Thank you so much for what you are doing. It really is. I don't even know how many people you've already provided warmth for, and how many more you will. Thank you so much.
You know, I want to say, I sometimes feel like there was that movie, Schindler's List, about how Schindler saved the Jews. And at the very end of the movie, he takes out his diamonds, the ring he had, whatever, saying, I could have saved 100 more people. I could have saved so many more. What do I need these stones for if I could have saved more? And sometimes, yes, that's exactly how I feel. You know, our guys out there are dropping from exhaustion saying, let's take a break. We're just so tired. But then they say, listen, how many more people can we save if we just keep working for 1 more hour? Just 1 more hour. That's the thought that is always on my mind.
Do you feel that helping Ukraine is part of your spiritual mission?
You know, today on Shabbat, we read the Torah portion called Yitro, which tells the story of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And when the Almighty gave us the Torah, and Torah is the word Ra, which means instruction, a guide for action. So the Torah obligates us. It was given to bring spirituality into this material world. And how do we bring spirituality into the world? Our sages said the world stands on 3 things: on Torah, on prayer, and on good deeds. And I wouldn't say that good deeds are merely material. If we bring aid to people, if we save people, that is spirituality. We do it using material things, but at its core, it is spirituality. That is why we are messengers in this world. That is, the Almighty commands it of us. It is said in our Torah that if someone is in trouble, you cannot just sit there and do nothing. There is a story about the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. Actually, no, it was the second Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was a very spiritual man, very otherworldly. He was studying Torah and had completely forgotten about the physical world. Meanwhile, upstairs, a baby was crying. He didn't hear it because he was so immersed in prayer and study. But when his father, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, came up to him, he said, listen, when a child is crying, you must hear it. So there are people who focus entirely on, yes, we had prayer breakfasts here, for instance. And indeed, prayer is essential. You can't do without prayer. We must turn to the Almighty. But if a person prays all day while a baby cries nearby, and he doesn't save that child, well, in Judaism, that's not just wrong. It means you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. In our tradition, you must put down the book and go save that person. If someone is crying, if someone is suffering, you can't just sit there thinking, oh, someone else will save them. No, if you walk past, in fact, there's a specific commandment in the Torah. Do not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. If you walk past and someone is drowning and screaming, you can't say, oh, I'm late for a meeting, maybe someone else will save him. No, you are obligated to stop, grab a lifebuoy, and go save him. It's not just a desire, it is a duty. Therefore, I believe that saving people, given what is happening now, people whose lives, health, children, and loved ones are under threat, and soldiers are people too. Saving lives and human health is a mitzvah commandment from the Torah, and therefore, it is spirituality, bringing someone a glass of water so they don't die of thirst or hunger. That is spirituality. If all we do is pray, I mean we must pray. God forbid I ever diminish the importance of prayer. But if we pray while someone is dying nearby and we refuse to hear them, then I don't believe that prayer ever reaches heaven. This is exactly why we live in a material world. The Almighty sent our souls here, wrapped them in material bodies, so that in this material world we can perform practical, material commandments, not just be theorists. There are a lot of theorists out there. They will tell you the right way to do things, the right way to pray, the right way to do this or that, but there is no action behind it. But another person, and this is what I do, excuse me, but when I get a call and hear about a problem, I immediately start figuring out how to solve it, how to handle the logistics, how to fix it properly, urgently, quickly, without any bureaucracy. That is what it's all about. The Almighty, it is written, Chesed, kindness, built the world. The Almighty built this world on kindness. It is written, Ki shafetz, Chesed hu, for he desires kindness. The Almighty was self-sufficient. He didn't need to create this world. He had everything he needed. He created the world to bestow some kindness upon it. And we must be like the Almighty. Therefore, we must bring kindness and do good. How much good should we do? As much as we can. There are no limits here.
Thank you so much. What you're saying really hits home. As you said, prayer and action absolutely must go hand in hand. Thank you so much for that. Thank you very much. This isn't the first time you've made this journey from Kyiv to Washington, and not just Washington, D.C., but New York and many other places, to bring the truth to the international community. We understand how important this is, because without united efforts, without support, it is very difficult. So thank you very much for this. I'd like to ask you, what message do you have for the international community, the Ukrainian diaspora, and the American people? What is the single most important thing everyone needs to understand about this war in Ukraine? What perhaps has not been conveyed enough? Something that people over here might still be misunderstanding?
You know, I've noticed here in America, once again, that there's still a lot of lingering misunderstanding, or perhaps Russian propaganda is just doing its job in a very, let's say, clever and cunning way, distorting reality. Some people actually think the war is already over, that things have quieted down, or that peace has already been achieved, or that Ukraine has already surrendered, or even that there's no need to help Ukraine because who knows who even lives there. So many of these kinds of narratives just suddenly pop up out of nowhere. I've even met some officials here. That's why it's very important to get the truth out. That's why it's important for your channel and all others to spread the truth. So, to get the truth out, that's one thing. And second is to make sure that Americans and the global community don't succumb to fatigue. Yes, it's been 4 years of war. Everyone is tired. People are fed up. How much longer can this go on? But Ukrainians, they aren't just tired. They are living through a tragedy, and they are not ready to give up. Some people told me, why don't they just let them? Well, okay, Putin wants it, so why don't they just let him have it? Stop fighting, refuse the war. I say, what exactly do you mean? That they surrender? They'll either be completely destroyed or taken into slavery, or, how can anyone even suggest something like that? On the contrary, we must say that these are heroes fighting for their independence against a massively powerful and ruthless enemy that wants to annihilate them, wipe out their culture, their language, their national identity, everything they have. That is why I am conveying this message. As a representative of the Jewish people, whom the Nazis once simply tried to exterminate, both physically and morally, destroying our culture, books, everything, trying to erase the very memory of Jewishness. I feel it is my absolute duty not to stand on the sidelines, but to help. I could have left Ukraine before the war even started, but I didn't, because I see what is happening. This is a repeat of the exact same narrative from World War II, just coming from a different direction. We cannot stay silent, otherwise it will spread to other countries. It's not just about Ukraine. Ukraine is defending not only itself, it is defending Europe, even defending America. Ukraine is defending the entire free world. Look who Russia has allied itself with. Iran. Iran is currently just the same source of evil, destroying its own people. And it wants to destroy Israel. They are supplying Russia with Shahed drones, which are used to bombard peaceful Ukrainian cities every single day. And in return, Russia is paying them back with, who knows, nuclear technologies or other barbaric things. So the empire of evil doesn't sleep. That's why the entire free world, the normal world, must stand on the side of Ukraine and on the side of Israel.
That is so true. Ukraine is playing a very key role because it is fighting not only for its own freedom, but also for the freedom of the entire world. And I really appreciate that you brought up this invincibility of the Ukrainian people, that unbreakable spirit. These are people who refuse to fall into despair, who are truly ready to stand their ground and endure, no matter what. Like you said, a lot of people watch and think, perhaps, that it's all over there, and so on. But if people actually paid attention to what's happening inside Ukraine, they would see that red map every day and see that every single night, there are these attacks, and that this is far from over. What are your thoughts on this invincibility? How do you see these people? What helps the Ukrainian people not to give up?
You know, yesterday at the gala dinner held at the Washington Hotel, the Washington Hilton, there were many people, and one of the speakers was a soldier. Unfortunately, I don't remember his name, but he is a true hero. He shared his story of how he had to survive and fight while completely surrounded by the enemy. They went for about 2.5 days without water, and how at the very last second, the Almighty gave them water, and they fought heroically, saving their friends. And in the end, he and the majority of his friends managed to break out of that encirclement, even though they had zero chance. And this is, such heroic stories. You know, after World War II, there were many heroic stories about Soviet people who fought and made these miraculous escapes. We used to live and learn from these, when we were growing up in the Soviet Union, we were raised on those stories. And now, after this current war, there will be many. In fact, there are already many stories, and I know them because many people tell me them personally. Both military and civilians tell me about these acts of bravery, and I see the heroism of the Ukrainian people with my own eyes. Volunteers who risk their lives. I've known people like that since the very first day of the war. I knew volunteers who died just trying to save people. I know such daredevils, people who aren't afraid of anything. They went into the most dangerous hot zones and continue to do so. These are volunteers, military personnel, and simply people surviving in such places, and they refuse to. Why is Russia bombing the power grid right in the freezing cold? They think people will break and say, that's it, there's nothing we can do, there's no hope, let's just surrender into slavery. Better to be slaves but alive than to be killed. That's what Russia is banking on. That is why I'm explaining this here in America. I say, instead of finding fault with Ukraine, you should be proud. You must, on the contrary, say that these people are heroes, people who refuse to surrender, who keep fighting, even though they are in the minority, with fewer numbers, fewer weapons, fewer resources, but they are still fighting. And we must give them the credit they deserve and help them.
How would you characterize the Ukrainian people in general? What kind of people are they?
Today, the Ukrainian people are a heroic people who, as I said, have not broken. Let's be honest, very few people believed that Ukraine would stand at the beginning of the war. I think even many Ukrainians were surprised.
They didn't expect it.
That they held out, keep holding out, and will continue to hold out. And the international community, nobody, or very few, believed it. But it was exactly because of that self-sacrifice, that unity of the nation, that they were able to pull through. The main thing is to carry this forward, because after 4 years of war, everyone gets tired. The soldiers are tired, civilians are tired, and it is incredibly hard mentally. It is very hard. I know it firsthand because I am right there. I don't serve in the military.
You do serve.
I serve, but in a different way. I serve, and even at my age, I see it all. And every day, people ask me, why do you need this? Go get some rest. And I say, how can I rest if people out there get no rest? I even say to people in Ukraine, how can you go out and have fun when there are people on the front lines, freezing in a trench somewhere, lying under constant shelling without water or food? And when you truly grasp that, yesterday when the soldiers spoke, these heroes, many people cried. And this is happening every single day. There are people like him every single day. Every day someone dies, someone is crippled, or rather crippled by Russian missiles and artillery. Someone becomes an orphan, someone a widow. And I just can't. It is very hard for me to see this. I try to do something myself and awaken others to do the same.
Thank you so much. How exactly can the international community, the community in America, help Ukraine? What specific ways would you suggest for people to get involved right now?
Well, how should I put it? For example, we are in Washington. Washington is, in a way, the ultimate decision-making center. A lot of decisive actions originate from here. Right now, we see that America wants to, so to speak, bring down the evil Iranian regime, which is destroying other nations and its own people. And when America truly wants to do something, it can do it. That's one thing. We know there is a way. Just remember Ronald Reagan, for example. People need to understand that there is someone in trouble. You know, I sometimes even explain it here in terms of American interests and so on. That might be a more cynical explanation, but whatever the explanation, the ultimate goal is to save lives. But I explain it on a basic humanitarian level. People are dying. People are becoming disabled every single day because we aren't helping them. So right now, they need generators. They need medical supplies, air defense systems. They need a lot of things. For example, to repair the power plants, they need all kinds of spare parts. Can you imagine? I personally think it's an absolute miracle how these energy workers operate. And then Russia deliberately sends missiles just to kill those very workers. They are out there working in the freezing cold, getting frostbite. There aren't enough spare parts. Imagine how much needs to be brought in every time something gets destroyed. It is truly a heroic chapter, let's call it that. Someday, with God's help, when the war ends, and I pray peace comes soon, I think many authors will write about this heroic chapter of the Ukrainian people, and we will uncover just how many incredible acts of heroism took place. That's why the world must not remain indifferent. It must help. How to help? Financially and with specific humanitarian aid. Not just sending whatever is lying around, but sending exactly what is needed. To do that, you need to find out what is needed. Right now, it's generators. It's those, what are they called? Eco-flows, which store energy, power banks, medical supplies. There are so many ways to help, so reach out. We are ready to receive aid and distribute it properly. I always go myself when we receive it. Right now, very little humanitarian aid is coming in, practically none. But when we did receive it, I always went myself to check. Not just that it arrived, but that it reached the right recipients, that it was functional, and that everything was up and running. For instance, we brought in water purification devices. I would go personally to see exactly where they were needed. We would hand them over, and a month later, once everything was connected, I would go back personally to check on it again. I saw people drinking clean water. Everything was fine. It was working. I do it to make sure it doesn't sit in a warehouse somewhere, so that there's no bureaucratic red tape. I believe it's very important that aid is provided promptly and quickly, delivered to the destination, and put to work right away.
Thank you so much, and I want to appeal to everyone. Please continue staying informed about what is happening in Ukraine. Please follow Rabbi Azman. Get involved and absolutely unconditionally support Ukraine.
While I'm here in Washington, D.C., I want to take a moment to thank everyone, the American people, the President of the United States, Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, the Senate, the government, the administration, the State Department, everyone, and simply the American people who helped, are helping, and will, I hope, help Ukraine.
And we thank you for tirelessly coming to Washington and making sure everyone learns the truth, for your incredible advocacy, for never giving up, and for doing so much to help. Thank you very much.
Blessings to you as well.